From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Mishpatim, worshiping God. The notion of worshiping God seems like such an amorphous idea. What does it mean to worship God? In fact, in our parsha, there seems to be a commandment to worship God. Va'avadtem et Hashem Elokechem. And you shall worship God, the Lord your God. And He will bless, in turn, your bread and your water. God will prevent illness from being in your midst. The question is, what does it mean to worship God? So one midrash has two definitions. It says, Avdehu b'torato, Avdehu b'miktasho. There are two ways of worshiping God. One is through His Torah. That in turn can be understood in two ways as well. His Torah, the study of Torah, that one way, a very unique way of Jewish worship is to worship God through studying His Torah. That's our worship. And the other idea is through His Torah, meaning by observing the Torah, by keeping the Torah in its entirety, the various laws that we have. That's what it means to worship God, the mitzvos. And the second idea is Avdeu b'miktasho, worship Him through His holy sanctuary. That's how people usually take worship. Worship is usually in a sanctuary. Worship is something you do in a synagogue, in a temple, in various religions, in their various temples and various houses of worship. It's the worship what we do in a special place set aside for God. The notion of worshiping God in a sanctuary, that many religions have that idea. The notion of worshiping God through the mitzvos, that is, through commandments, through being commanded, this is a unique Jewish idea. And perhaps even the most unique Jewish idea is to worship God through the study of Torah. By studying Torah, we also fulfill the idea of worshiping God. After all, in Vayayim Shamo, in the second paragraph of our Shema, we talk about worshiping God, worshiping God with all of our heart. And later on in the same paragraph, it says you should teach these matters to your children and wherever you are, so that teaching Torah on a constant basis, learning Torah as often as we can, wherever we are, whenever we can, is part of the way of worshiping. These are two unique Jewish ways of worshiping. Now, the idea of worshiping God in the sanctuary is often associated with the avodah, restore the avodah, the worship service to your holy sanctuary. We usually refer to sacrifices. Worship in the temple is often associated with sacrifice. However, the Rambam most famously associates this verse with the Gemara in Tainit. The Gemara in Tainit says that when the Shema says you should worship God with all of your heart, they say, Ezu avodah shibalev. What's a worship you can do in your heart? I know a worship you can do with your hands. You can do by slaughtering an animal, sprinkling the blood. I know how you can bow down in a sanctuary and thereby worship God. But how do you worship in your heart? And the Gemara answers, that's tefillah, that's prayer. Prayer is worship. Prayer is working for God. Avodah shebalev, the worship of the heart. So the Rambam indeed believes that this pasuk here, we're not sure where he gets it from, if it's in the Midrash HaGadol, but does it appear in earlier Midrashim before the days of the Rambam? Or did the Rambam come up with this himself, that if indeed there is such a thing called Avodah Shebalev, worship in the heart, and this verse says you should worship God, then this verse means that it's a Torah mitzvah to worship God through prayer of the heart, through the various prayers that we have. And every time we daven Shemona Esrei, we have heartfelt prayers. This indeed is the worship of God. The idea that worship comes through simply asking for our things. We need water, we need bread, we need refuah shlema, we need healing, and we ask for that. That is worship. It's an unusual idea. That somehow asking for what we need, that is worship. And yet the verse seems to support it. It says, worship God. In other words, according to the Rambam, ask for your bread, and ask for your water, and ask for your parnasa, and ask for good health. And then God will bless your lechem, your mayim, and take away your machala. He'll bless your bread, your water, and remove illness from amongst you. This is how the Rambam would read this particular verse. Then there's a more Hasidic idea of the avodah. Often this Sfas Emes, the Ger Rebbe says, Al derech avoda, through the way of avoda. What do you mean avoda? Avoda, it's a hard work it takes to be a Jew. The Rebbe of Slonim says that you know what it means to worship God. When you worship your master, you say, yes, sir. Whatever he says, you say, yes, sir. What does that mean? I may want to do something else right now. I'm busy, I'm doing something else. But the master says, go get me, fetch me a cup of water. So you go run and you fetch. Why? Because your needs are not important. As a servant, the needs of the master are most important. Rabbi of Slonim says, when you take something that you wanted to do, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that, because God doesn't want me to do that, that's avoda. That's the hard work of being a Jew. A young couple are together and they want to do certain things. They can't do it. Because the Torah says, you should worship God, do the work. Say, yes, sir. Say, make God's will your will. That's what it means, worship. The Rebbe of Slonim quotes his father, who says, a day on which a Jew does not do one thing to go against his evil inclination, one thing he wanted to do, and instead he did something else. That's not a day of life. To live in worship of God means to do something other than what you wanted to do because God wanted you to do it. Refrain from something or do something because God said it. That's avoda. That's the hard work. Avoda can't be easy. If to pray for your bread is easy, it's not avoda. The Rambam might have to argue that when I'm praying and that I feel like I don't have my bread, but I really want my bread, and I know that God provides the bread, but I know that perhaps I'm not worthy of getting that bread from God. I'm not worthy of God listening to my prayers, and that place, that uncomfortable place between what I want and what I need, and who I am and what I deserve, that uncomfortable place, and evaluating where am I and what do I deserve, that's the uncomfortable place of avoda, of worship, that makes us squirm a little bit, makes us say, this is hard work to be able to say these words and to be able to ask for these things. So that's why sometimes you see people in prayer, they seem like they're in pain, because prayer can be painful. As we look at ourselves, mitpalel, we judge ourselves and say, am I worthy of God answering my prayer and God blessing my water and my bread? As I look honestly at myself, I'm pained by it. And through that pain, that's your avoda, that's your worship. As you honestly look at yourself, and hopefully, as we do, begin to try to change ourselves. And as we begin to try to change ourselves, that's the avoda, that's the hard work, that's the beginning of change. Through that hard work, hopefully, God will bless our lech macha, mimecha, God will bless our bread, bless our water, and remove illness from our midst. Thank you for joining us here for our discussion of avoda, of what it means to worship God. Parshat Mishpatim. And join us each week for our discussions of Parshiot and also of the various upcoming holidays. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz for making today's presentation possible. Join us again here at the Anshe Sfar Beth Elam congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee for our 10 minutes of Torah. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.